What if everything you've been taught about attraction is a lie? You were told that love wins hearts, that kindness builds connection, that being emotionally available makes you irresistible. But psychology, and especially dark psychology, reveals something far more uncomfortable. Attraction is not built on love first. It is built on perceived power. Before emotions deepen, before attachment forms, the human brain scans for dominance, control, and status. This isn't romance. This is survival wiring, and the one who understands this silently controls the dynamic. Have you ever noticed how people chase what feels slightly out of reach? This is not coincidence. It is one of the oldest manipulation tactics embedded in human behavior. Scarcity increases perceived value. When someone appears emotionally self-sufficient, not desperate, not overly available, they trigger intrigue. In dark psychology tactics, controlled distance creates tension, and tension creates attraction. The moment you make someone feel they might lose access to you, their emotional investment increases. The brain releases dopamine not when it has something, but when it fears losing it. Why do emotionally reactive people lose attraction faster? Because emotional instability signals weakness in power dynamics. In both philosophy and psychological warfare, the calmest person in the room holds control. When you overreact, over-explain, or over-pursue, you surrender frame. And in attraction, frame is everything. The one who controls the emotional climate becomes the psychological leader. This is not cruelty. This is hierarchy. Humans are subconsciously drawn toward those who appear internally unshaken. What creates obsession more? Affection or unpredictability? Dark psychology reveals a disturbing truth: unpredictability wins. This is called intermittent reinforcement, one of the most powerful manipulation tactics ever studied in behavioral psychology. When attention is consistent, the brain relaxes. When it is unpredictable, the brain becomes addicted. The uncertainty creates emotional spikes, and emotional spikes create attachment. This is why controlled mystery is more powerful than constant validation. Have you asked yourself why powerful personalities rarely chase? Because chasing signals imbalance. The moment you pursue excessively, you communicate lower value. In attraction psychology, perceived value determines leverage. When you act as if your time, energy, and attention are limited, you activate competitive instincts. This is dark psychology in motion, not through aggression, but through silent dominance. The less you seek approval, the more approval you generate. Is love really the foundation, or is it a reward for power? Machiavellian philosophy suggests that power precedes affection. Respect comes before romance. When someone perceives you as decisive, emotionally disciplined, and socially valuable, attraction forms naturally. Love without power feels fragile. Power without love feels magnetic. And the most dangerous individuals understand how to balance both, using psychology not to beg for connection, but to command presence. What happens when you become the prize instead of the pursuer? Everything shifts. Conversations feel different. Energy feels different. The emotional tension flips. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" the silent question becomes, "Can they keep me?" This is the psychological pivot, the transformation from seeker to selector. And in dark psychology, this shift is the beginning of dominance. But power alone is not enough. Because once attraction begins, something even more dangerous determines who truly controls the game. Have you ever wondered why the person who cares less often controls more? It feels unfair, almost cruel, but psychology doesn't reward effort, it rewards leverage. In the realm of dark psychology, emotional detachment is not about being heartless, it is about being unshakable. The one who appears less emotionally dependent automatically holds higher perceived value. Why? Because humans instinctively chase what feels uncertain. When your emotional stability does not fluctuate based on someone else's attention, you silently communicate strength. And strength attracts. Why does consistency feel safe, but unpredictability feel addictive? This is where dark psychology tactics become dangerously effective. The human brain is wired around reward anticipation. When affection is constant, the nervous system relaxes. But when attention becomes slightly unpredictable, dopamine spikes. This is called intermittent reinforcement, one of the most powerful manipulation tactics ever observed in behavioral psychology. It's the same principle behind gambling addiction. You don't get rewarded every time, and that's exactly why you keep playing. Have you noticed how emotional availability can sometimes reduce attraction? When you give too much reassurance, too much validation, too much emotional exposure, you remove mystery. In both philosophy and attraction dynamics, mystery creates psychological tension. Tension creates curiosity, and curiosity fuels obsession. Emotional detachment, when done strategically, maintains that tension. It keeps the other person slightly unsure, slightly guessing, slightly invested. That uncertainty activates deeper emotional processing. What happens when you respond calmly instead of reacting emotionally? You disrupt expectations. Most people operate on impulse. They react when ignored. They chase when distance appears. But when you remain composed, when you don't panic at silence, you demonstrate internal control. In dark psychology, emotional regulation equals power. The calmer individual dictates the emotional rhythm, and the one who dictates rhythm controls attachment. Why do people obsess over those who seem independent? Because independence signals optionality. When someone feels that you are not emotionally dependent on them, their subconscious fear of losing you intensifies. This is not romance. This is survival psychology. Humans evolved to compete for scarce resources. Emotional detachment positions you as scarce, and scarcity increases perceived value. This subtle shift transforms you from accessible to desirable. Have you ever felt more drawn to someone after they pulled away slightly? That's not coincidence. That's neurological tension. When access decreases, imagination increases. The brain fills in gaps with idealized projections. This is one of the oldest manipulation tactics hidden inside human behavior. Distance amplifies fantasy, and fantasy strengthens emotional attachment far more than constant presence ever could. But isn't detachment cold or toxic? Only when used without awareness. True emotional detachment in dark psychology is not about cruelty. It's about self-mastery. It's about not letting your emotions be weaponized against you. When you control your reactions, you prevent others from controlling you. That psychological balance creates intrigue, and intrigue fuels obsession. So what happens when power from Keynote 1 meets emotional control from Keynote 2? You become unpredictable yet stable, distant yet magnetic, calm yet intense. And that combination triggers something deeper in human nature, because once power and detachment are established, there's another force that amplifies attraction even further. Why do you remember the person you never fully understood? Not the one who told you everything. Not the one who explained every emotion, but the one who remained slightly unreadable. That is not romance, that is psychology. The human mind is wired to solve puzzles. When something feels incomplete, the brain refuses to let it go. In dark psychology, mystery is not accidental. It is strategic tension, and tension keeps you emotionally present in someone's thoughts long after the interaction ends. Have you ever noticed how over-explaining kills attraction? The moment you reveal all your intentions, all your feelings, all your plans, the suspense disappears. In both ancient philosophy and modern behavioral psychology, perceived depth creates fascination. When someone cannot fully predict you, they invest mental energy trying to decode you. And mental investment is the seed of obsession. This is one of the most subtle dark psychology tactics, revealed just enough to intrigue, but never enough to satisfy completely. Why does silence sometimes feel louder than words? Because silence forces interpretation. When you stop explaining yourself, the other person begins filling in the blanks, and what they imagine is often more powerful than reality. This is where manipulation tactics quietly operate. The less clarity you provide, the more emotional projection occurs. Mystery invites imagination. Imagination intensifies attachment, and attachment strengthens psychological dependence. What happens when you become unpredictable, but not chaotic? There is a difference between instability and controlled mystery. Chaos repels. Composed unpredictability attracts. In dark psychology, this balance is crucial. When your responses aren't instantly predictable, when your availability fluctuates slightly, you disrupt emotional patterns. The brain craves patterns. When patterns break, attention increases, and increased attention fuels desire. Have you ever replayed someone's words in your mind because you couldn't fully decode them? That replay loop is psychological tension in action. The human brain hates unresolved signals. When communication feels layered, when there's depth beneath simplicity, curiosity intensifies. This is why enigmatic personalities often appear magnetic. They do not reveal everything. They allow space for interpretation, and interpretation creates emotional attachment stronger than direct reassurance ever could. Why does scarcity amplify mystery? Because constant access eliminates wonder. When someone is always available, always responding instantly, always explaining themselves, the subconscious categorizes them as predictable. But when access feels limited, value increases. This principle appears repeatedly in psychology, philosophy, and manipulation tactics across history. Scarcity enhances importance. Limited exposure magnifies emotional impact. But isn't transparency healthier? Transparency builds trust, but mystery builds attraction. In the early stages of connection, emotional intensity often depends on uncertainty. Dark psychology tactics leverage this by maintaining controlled ambiguity. You are not lying. You are simply not overexposing. You are not manipulating maliciously. You are protecting your psychological leverage. So what happens when power, detachment, and mystery combine? You become psychologically immersive. Hard to read, hard to replace, hard to forget. And when someone cannot fully figure you out, their emotional system stays activated, because the mind keeps chasing what it cannot completely possess. But attraction does not peak at mystery alone. There is another invisible force that overrides personality itself. Why do people treat you differently the moment your status changes? The same voice, the same face, the same personality, yet suddenly respect increases, attention increases, attraction increases. This is not coincidence, this is psychology. In both ancient philosophy and modern dark psychology, perceived status overrides raw personality. Humans are biologically wired to respond to hierarchy. Before emotions even process attraction, the brain scans for value indicators, power, influence, social proof. Have you ever noticed how someone becomes more attractive when others want them? That is pre-selection, one of the most powerful dark psychology tactics in social dynamics. When others show interest in you, your perceived value rises instantly. The human brain assumes, if others desire this person, they must be valuable. This is subconscious validation. It bypasses logic and hits directly at survival instincts. Social proof acts as a silent amplifier of attraction. Why does reputation sometimes matter more than character? Because reputation is visible, character is not. And attraction often begins with perception, not truth. In manipulation tactics, controlling how you are perceived can influence how you are treated. Status signals how you carry yourself, who you associate with, how others respond to you, shape emotional reactions before a single deep conversation happens. The brain forms judgments in seconds. Personality unfolds later. What happens when you raise your perceived value without saying a word? Energy shifts. People listen longer. They interrupt less. They invest more. In dark psychology, silence combined with high-status signals creates dominance. When you don't seek validation but receive it naturally, you become psychologically magnetic. The absence of need communicates strength, and strength triggers attraction far deeper than charm ever could. Have you ever felt more drawn to someone after seeing them command a room? That reaction is primal. Leadership cues activate subconscious admiration, the way someone stands, the way they speak calmly, the way others respond to them. These are nonverbal status markers. In evolutionary psychology, aligning with high-status individuals increased survival chances. That instinct still operates today, even in modern relationships. Status equals security, and security creates emotional pull. Why do people upgrade their appearance, lifestyle, or network to increase attraction? Because external signals shape internal assumptions. In dark psychology tactics, perception management becomes a strategic tool. The environment you occupy, the discipline you display, the ambition you project, all of these amplify status. And once status rises, personality flaws are often overlooked. This is the uncomfortable truth about human nature. But does status replace authenticity? Not completely, but it opens doors authenticity alone cannot. In philosophy, power has always preceded influence. Once influence is established, personality gains weight. Without status signals, personality struggles to compete in high-stakes dynamics. This is why attraction often feels unfair. It responds to hierarchy before morality. So what happens when power, detachment, mystery, and status align? You stop competing, you start positioning. You no longer chase attention. Attention gravitates toward you. Emotional dynamics shift in your favor because perceived value dictates leverage. And when leverage is yours, the rules of attraction bend quietly in your direction. But even status is not the final layer of control. Because there is one principle that determines who truly dominates every interaction. What if every interaction you've ever lost was decided in the first few seconds? Not by words, not by looks, but by something invisible, the frame. In psychology, a frame is the emotional and mental context that defines reality in a conversation. And in dark psychology, whoever controls the frame controls perception. If they define you, you react. If you define yourself, they adjust. Attraction, respect, dominance, all of it flows from this silent battlefield. Have you noticed how some people never seem shaken, no matter what is said to them? That's frame control. When someone teases them, they don't defend. When someone challenges them, they don't justify. They remain centered. In dark psychology tactics, reacting emotionally means surrendering power. The moment you try to prove yourself, you accept the other person's frame, and the one who seeks validation unconsciously lowers their status. Emotional control is not coldness, it is leverage. Why do arguments escalate the moment you feel the need to explain yourself? Because explanation often comes from insecurity. In both philosophy and advanced manipulation tactics, the calmest individual holds the dominant position. When you over-explain, you communicate doubt. When you stay composed and redirect calmly, you communicate certainty. Certainty is magnetic. Doubt is contagious. And humans instinctively follow certainty. What happens when you refuse to accept someone else's narrative about you? You reclaim power instantly. Frame control means defining the meaning of the situation. If someone accuses you of being distant, you redefine it as selective. If someone says you're intimidating, you redefine it as confident. In dark psychology, perception shapes emotion, and emotion shapes behavior. Control perception, and you guide behavior without force. Have you ever felt attracted to someone simply because they seemed unbothered? That feeling is psychological submission. When someone remains emotionally stable under pressure, your subconscious reads them as higher value. This is why emotional reactions weaken influence. Reactivity equals vulnerability. Composure equals dominance. The frame belongs to the one who feels least threatened. Why do powerful personalities rarely chase or argue? Because chasing accepts the other person's importance as superior. In dark psychology tactics, the individual who appears less dependent defines the interaction. They are willing to walk away, and willingness to walk away is the strongest frame of all. It communicates abundance, and abundance is irresistible. What is the final evolution of power, detachment, mystery, and status? It is internal sovereignty. When you control your emotions, your reactions, your identity, no external validation can shake you. This is where psychology becomes philosophy. The ultimate dominance is not over others. It is over yourself. And once you master that, every interaction bends subtly in your favor. So who truly wins the game of attraction? Not the loudest, not the kindest, not even the most attractive. The one who controls the frame, the one who defines reality instead of reacting to it, the one who understands dark psychology, manipulation tactics, human behavior, and philosophical dominance, and uses them with precision. Because in the end, attraction is not about being chosen. It is about positioning yourself so powerfully that choosing you feels inevitable.